Hello, welcome. We're at the monthly Faith Formation Leaders Gathering for the Episcopal Province of New England, and I am pleased to welcome Lisa Brown, who has been a colleague of mine through Forma, to be able to share with us some of her ideas about doing theology sideways. This is going to be a very informal conversation. Lisa's going to start us off with prayer, and we'll have a chance to self-introduce just a little bit and give some background to who we are and what we're doing, and then have a chance to talk with her about things that she has done with the youth ministry that she has run, and give us a chance to reflect on ways that we've done theology sideways ourselves. So without a whole lot of further ado, Lisa, would you mind opening us with prayer?
All right. And we are going to go with the Collect for Education from the Book of Common Prayer. O eternal God, bless all schools, colleges, and universities, and all places of learning, that they may be lively centers for sound learning, new discovery, and the pursuit of wisdom, and grant that those who teach and those who learn may find you to be the source of all truth. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So as I mentioned, I'm Julie Lytle. I am currently located in Hyannis, Massachusetts, and it's my joy to have a chance to chat with folks around the province using the wonders of technology. My profession has been blending technology using social media for faith formation, and that's been one of the things that Lisa and I have shared in common, is a great love for the ways in which we can transform things by using the technologies available to us to share the stories that we have of faith. I've been doing this for probably 30 years. My experience is coming out of doing a 7th through 12th grade middle high school and high school age kids in the Kingdom Construction Company when I was in Indiana, and then went on to do a lot of study to be able to teach people how to do that as well. So that's what I'm offering to this conversation, and I'll invite each of you to share your location and a little about yourself to help us get there. Lisa, do you want to go next?
Sure. I am Lisa Brown, and my current job is the Director of Digital Ministry for Membership Vision. That is a company that helps churches with their websites and social media and digital ministry engagement. My background is I spent about the last decade as the communications coordinator and the director of children's ministry for St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Pittsburgh, PA, which is where I'm located. And I, in addition to digital ministry, I'm also very involved in curriculum design specifically for VBS. I have a book out on VBS right now, the best ever VBS workbook. And I'm also, I really enjoy collaborative art projects as a means of teaching. And I also worked with Julie Lytle as part of a leadership and lifelong faith formation cohort through a certification program through Forma, and that's how Julie and I really got to know each other.
Patricia, how about you?
Well, this is my first year as Director of Faith Formation at St. John's Episcopal in Bangor, Maine. And I have a Master of Divinity, but that's about all which doesn't give me much experience at all, in fact. So I'm learning as I'm going, and it's been a wild ride thus far. And I see no let up until June. And even now, we are thinking of a vacation Bible school, which we have never done. So I'll have to purchase your book, Lisa, because that's completely out of my comfort zone. But then everything else has as well. It's been an interesting trip, for sure. That's it.
Well, good luck with it. I know the first year is usually the hardest, and if you can make it through that, you can make it through almost anything.
Yes.
So I keep telling myself, for sure.
Good. David, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little about you?
Sure. I'm simply a retired Episcopal priest. I've been, when did I retire? About 4 years ago, I think. I'm not very good on dates. Everything is vague to me, okay? And I'm a regular parishioner at a nearby church, but I'm not on the staff. I didn't want to be on the staff, per se. I just wanted to sit in the pews and enjoy things. She has me preach every now and then. And I'm I'm a chaplain to the local fire department, and I'm an EMT there. And I've recently gotten involved in Kairos Prison Ministries, which is very exciting to me. And I do supply around the Diocese of Connecticut, and that's about it.
That's great. Thank you. Reed, we're just getting a chance to introduce ourselves and say a little about what we're bringing to the conversation before we turn to the doing theology sideways. You're welcome to stay on camera. I think we lost him completely. Reed, are you with us?
I'm back.
Hey, Reed, are you there? Right as you were being put on the spot. Sorry about that. We're taking a second just to introduce ourselves and say a little something about what you're doing and what brought you to this ministry to give Lisa a sense of who she's talking to.
Great. I'm an assistant rector at 2 different churches. One of them has no kids and is mostly older folks. And the other one, where I mostly focus on the youth ministries from 5th to 12th grade, is program size. And I got into this ministry because I had such a good experience growing up in my youth group on mission trips, in a lot of service work and discernment, good confirmation class, and so kind of came full circle through seminary and find myself back in that role again.
It's amazing how that happens. I'm noticing that Ann Post is just joining us. Can you hear us, Ann? She might not be on enough. Lisa, why don't I suggest that you get us started just giving a little bit more about what you've done with your youth group and how you've understood doing theology sideways in your context.
Sure. We have a youth director that I work very closely with. And I think one of the things that's been very successful in our parish is the fact that children's ministry and youth ministry are seen as very much a continuum and not stovepipe kind of ministries. We work very closely, and while he is working with the youth, and that would be really any of the kids middle school and up, so that's 6th through 12th grade, I teach the confirmation class, which is 7th and 8th grade, and our youth minister helps with VBS. When I'm at VBS, we utilize a lot of the youth as part of our VBS. Many of our youth are also Sunday school teachers. So I think the fact that the two of us have such and I go on mission trips, and we create mission trip slideshows that I'll show to the little kids during VBS or during Sunday school hours. So I think the fact that we have such a close interworking relationship really creates for a strong program. One of the things that I think when we talk about kind of sideways theology is that as kids are getting into middle school, hello Ann, are getting into middle school and to high school, some of the most powerful formation experiences are not sitting them down in a classroom and saying, okay, let's learn theology, let's learn our Bible studies, but putting them in the role as teacher or as helping with the formation of younger children. And I think that really helps not only in sharing their own faith and kind of giving them some autonomy and responsibility for developing their own faith.
I'd be curious, this topic, doing theology sideways, came out of last month's conversation with the faith formation leaders. And there was an awareness that it's really hard to get people to come and sit and, quote, learn about their faith. That right. A lot of folks think about the fact that they're going to be sitting to a lecture and, it's like being back in school and taking notes, and it's not engaging. And so I'm curious if you're having similar kinds of challenges in your ministry context. This is going to be kind of open conversation time. And what you're seeing is ways to help people, if you have any, of bringing them to the trough to drink without necessarily letting them know that it's water that they're going to be having.
Right.
And I saw your head nodding when I was describing the people reluctant to come to what they think is going to be a class. Is that something you find a lot in your context? We're not hearing you. Are you on mute?
Yep.
Uh-oh.
And now we lost her.
Patricia, is that something that you've been struggling with in terms of people in your parish?
I guess I would be surprised if any one of us aren't struggling with that. It's certainly true up here. It's on a, today we have a storm. Nobody's going to come out. I'm not coming out either, for that matter, but that's another story. Yeah, we have a lot of trouble getting people to come.
I think the most
I'm
important
wondering,
thing.
Reed. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. The most important.
I was going to say, I think the most important thing is that attracts young people, anyone, is the opportunity to do real ministry. And I find that our response and the engagement, when you give people real work to do, as opposed to saying, come and learn about something, I think particularly for our kids, I know in many communities, the amount of time the kids are putting into school, they don't want more school. And if it's a question of sitting and something that feels very academic, that's not appealing. But the opportunity to make a positive impact in children's lives, in other people's lives, in their community, I think that's something that young people really respond to.
I know for me, working with service and immersion trips was where the integration of thinking about faith and doing something about faith and being able to engage in a community conversation about the intersection between the two really came to life. And it sounds like, Reed, you had a little bit of that growing up as well and with what you're trying to do. Do you have examples of ways that that's worked?
Yeah, this year we've had a really good experience with, well, I'll say that in my context, I feel this might not have been what the people were actually saying, but part of what I internalized was, we want you to put on something that is highly intellectual for our kids and where they're going to learn excellent things. And probably against having not reflected a lot on that, I guess, at the beginning, I sort of launched into that. And in the second year, some of our leaders said, well, what if once a month we don't do anything on Sunday, and on Saturday we take the kids all to the soup kitchen? And I said, great, that sounds great. And they were all in to do the driving and staff that, and that has been attended far more robustly than Sunday morning programs. Even though, if I'd suggested out of the blue normally that something was going to happen in the middle of a Saturday, people would say, oh, no, we could never do a Saturday. Well, they've been turning out for this. We do RSVPs and we'll get 7 RSVPs and then 9 kids will show up, which is unprecedented in the other things that I'm leading. So yeah, absolutely. When you do Christianity instead of talking about it, I think it's very appealing. Julie looks frozen to me.
Julie, are you frozen? And Ann, are you
I'm
talking?
sorry. Lisa,
There she is.
Lisa, would you mind taking over for a little bit? I need to check something here at the house.
Sure. Ann, did you have your hand up? Can't, okay. We can't hear you. Did you unmute your mic? Okay, we can't hear you. We love technology.
Do you have a toggle switch on your
The
board
other,
there, Ann?
or yeah, sometimes the microphone, there's a little drop down by it, and maybe?
No.
You're not hearing her either, Reed? Okay. The other thing is, Ann, I know that if you put your phone number in, that Julie might be able to call you, that sometimes it's better to do the audio via telephone. So if you type your phone number in the chat box, that Julie might be able to call you, and that the audio works better if you do your audio on your phone. Sometimes that works. In the meantime, one of the things that I could say is when we do a Vacation Bible School program, we typically design our own curriculum, and one of the things that I do is that I invite the kids to participate in the planning of it. And I've always said, you know, I don't have adults running up to me at coffee hour in February going, Mrs. Brown, I'm so excited. And I think that's been a big part of it. I always say the Vacation Bible School is more about the older kids than it is about the little kids, because the little kids are going to have a good time no matter what you do. Whereas the older kids, in going through the daily themes, they're learning theology, and they're learning what you want them to learn, but they don't realize it because you're telling it to them by way of saying to them, well, how would you live into this? Well, you know, what kind of craft would you do that would reflect this? I mean, and the other thing is they will have ideas that blow you out of the water. For example, this year we were doing a City of God theme. And on the days that we were talking about cornerstones and rocks and stones, I said, I need a good snack. And they looked at me and they were like, Mrs. Brown, duh, Pop Rocks. And so we had, you know, fruit and Pop Rocks. And so that the ownership that kids feel when they've been part of planning something, or like I'll have them decorate my set, and I'll be like, all right, you know, this year we're doing Christmas in July, I need a manger. And they'll spend hours constructing a manger and palm trees and decorations that I wouldn't spend that much time doing it, and they feel that much more of a sense of ownership. So I think that's really important with working with young people, again, giving them that voice and that autonomy and the responsibility to live into it in their own way, not just through your vision. I'm wondering if Julie is back and maybe she can call Ann.
I've seen that same thing, Lisa, when I've gathered adults to talk about forming their kids, that it's this sort of stealth formation, like,
yes.
Oh, and you know, as you ask them, well, what do you already do at home with your kids, and what would you like to see and why, that suddenly you get adult formation out of it.
Yay.
Wait, I heard a voice from beyond. Ann?
I think so. Can you hear me?
There you are. Hello, Ann.
Yay. I think I lost the video, though, but that's okay.
But we know what you look like. You were seen.
Oh, great. Great.
Yep, and now we lost Reed again. Good heavens. And you're back. Okay.
Anyway.
So, Ann, I think somewhere along the line you had something to say. Do you remember what it was?
Yes.
There she is.
Can you hear me and see me both?
Yes.
Yes, awesome. I wanted to say what we've been doing is we've been trying to do a lot more intergenerational stuff.
we are at least once a month trying to do a forum where families and children and adult members, you don't have to be a member of, a part of the church family, the faith family. And we've been trying to do hands-on programs intergenerationally once a month, either in the parish hall. And a lot of these have to do with art-related activities related to a theme or a. So that's been something that's been working for us. 2 weeks ago, we had
we lost the sound again. Maybe? Oh, goodness. And Julie's back, but we just lost Anne. She had an example from 2 weeks ago, and we lost her. Is this because it's storming, or like why is everybody so in and out?
We are having winter coming, so that could be a part of it.
Okay. It's not in Pittsburgh. It was like 60 degrees here today, so.
Good for you.
I want to hear about Anne's art project. I always like to hear about art projects. Reed's mouth is moving.
Creative stuff.
Reed?
Yeah, sorry, I had myself muted so I wouldn't be crackling on, and then I forgot to unmute. So, no, all my problems have just been my own error. My connection has been good. We tried to do some intergenerational stuff last year during Lent. We called them Winter Wednesdays, and we billed them very heavily, and they were all art in some way, whether it was kind of mixed media painting or Legos or singing, and we with a congregation that has an average Sunday attendance of like 205, we got about 5 people at each of them, so it was pretty rough, I would say, from a success standpoint, and so I think that one of the learnings we had from that was that the artistic stuff for the people who were there, it was really fruitful, but it was hard to get people in the door. And what's worked well for us this year, we had one example of it last year, and then we kind of changed tack this year and used it more, was to have a maker space of some sort, seasonally appropriate, set up in the parish hall, so that as you came out of worship, it was there and ready, so that you didn't have to get out of the house on a separate night or whatnot. And all of them were a take-home, like an Advent wreath, an Easter garden is in the works. We're gonna do Lent in a bag. So anyway, that's some of the art stuff that has and hasn't worked for us.
Cool. So, Anne, can we hear you, Anne? Nope. Darn. Reed, have you ever done any collaborative art pieces? I'm just curious, because I love collaborative art pieces. So it's just different, is it something you take home? Like 1 year for VBS, one of our big projects was all the kids put their handprints on a big corrugated cardboard cross, and it hangs at the entrance to our Sunday school, and it's been there for 10 years. So like those kids are big now. And this past weekend, the presiding bishop came to Pittsburgh, the Diocese of Pittsburgh, for the first in a series of revivals. So 17 of our churches, I sent them strips of fabric, and to symbolize the Jesus movement, we had kids walk their feet with paint footprints along these strips of fabric, and we assembled them as an altar frontal, and it was really stunning. Like, look on Episcopal News Service. It was awesome. So or I've heard of churches do collaborative, like, stained glass windows, where people have come together to do that. So I think sometimes that balance between sometimes it's a take-home and sometimes it's a collaborative thing, like a big mural or something like that, can be really cool. the big thing with collaborative art is figuring out, once you've done it, where does it go? Like, we've done nets with prayers written on strips of muslin cloth tied on them, but then you're like, okay, what do I do with this? Like, it's got people's prayers. I don't want to like wad it up and stick it in a closet. So do you have people untie and take home a prayer that wasn't theirs? Or, so disassembly of collaborative projects, or deciding what it's going to be, the ultimate outcome, is always an important part of this. But sometimes those are kind of cool as an alternative to everybody take something home.
When you're talking about the stained glass and kind of a collaborative project, one of the things we did with the Kingdom Construction Company was ask the kids to tell a story of what was meaningful about their participation in the youth group. And we gave them a small canvas, a 5x6 canvas, and it was just a little thin cardboard style, and let them draw or paint whatever illustrated it. And then we took each of them and got them to talk about what is church and what does that mean for them. So they needed to do some of the reflecting as well as the story sharing. And as they finished, we pasted them together onto a wooden frame that was a cross shape. And then that cross was mobile to be in our youth group area where we did chapel once a week. It was mobile to go on the service trips with us when we were placed somewhere, so that we carried our sacred space with us and created a new one with that. As they had new stories over the course of time, they then added new squares because it wasn't completely filled. And so it was a way for them to continually renew what is the story that brought them to this place, what is the story that they're in the midst of, and then how do they share that with others in a way that invites others to add to it so that it never stops being told.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Well,
Yay,
there's Anna.
finally.
Hi, Anna.
These guys,
Talk to us about
well,
collaborative art.
I'm really getting a lot from you guys because I had been hearing you all along. We began, well, two things. I have a collaborative art program with two different levels of children, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth graders. I'm doing a series of 30 by 40 paintings that are based on some of the godly play stories that I've been telling in the children's chapel with the younger ones. So once they heard the stories via the godly play, then the next week I set up with the older, the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, as well as I think there's 1 or 2 7th and 8th graders too. They collaborate on murals. 8th graders. Eventually, they will be framed and hanging in a series. We finished the. We're working right now on Jonah and the Big Fish. We did Noah's Ark, and we have a few others planned for the future. I think we did the Holy Family too for Advent, Christmas. So that's a project. Now, I have the 7th and 8th graders. We use an image. They grid it out. Then we transfer the grid to a large 30 by 40 panel or a stretch canvas. I think they're pretty large. I have them sketch it out, and as a group, once the shapes are downed, they paint them in. So that's one so far that's been successful this year. Another one, last May, I had the opportunity to take a pilgrimage with the bishop and the Diocese of New York to the Holy Land. So we, it was fabulous. Once in a lifetime opportunity. And so we did a series. We're in the middle. We began to do a presentation. We started, I think it was 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago now, because it was Forma. And we did the first installment of the presentation, PowerPoint, using a lot of photography. But we also had 4 members of the pilgrimage come to share some of the spiritual insights and changes, transformations that really happened while we were there in the Holy Land. So we had personal sharing. We also had the photography that we took there in a slide, but it was an interactive slide presentation. And it went over so well that we will continue it during Lent. We also added the other opportunity for the Friends of Jerusalem, the Episcopal Diocese of Jerusalem. The folks, they have an office in Connecticut, and they're coming during the next installment, during Lent, to talk a little bit about ways that we as a congregation can support some of the ministries, the ongoing ministries that are happening in the Holy Land. So it's blossomed from just a slide presentation to an interactive spiritual sharing, and now hopefully we'll be able to bring this component of service. So that was another successful project.
The thing that I think is really important in what you said and all that is that what your children and young people are doing is an organic part of your authentic ministries of your church. I think too oftentimes children's ministry is like that activity that's happening over in the corner that's independent of like the real work of the church. And I think that's great when you can have a multi-generational approach that everybody to their own interests and abilities is able to engage in this ministry that's happening. That's awesome.
Well, we're blessed with a lot of children. We have a day school attached to the parish.
Oh, nice.
So we have, 135 children every day, on location. So we can draw from that experience. However, we're struggling with how to bridge that gap a little bit more. We're trying to be more invitational to the school. We're trying to find opportunities to invite more children and families to participate in the spiritual formation. So the other thing is we've begun to, in the day school, I've begun a series of godly play story times with the children in the school. It's just been once a month, which is really more than appropriate at this point, this stage. So the day school board voted because they wanted to have a little bit more of an opportunity to have some sort of faith formation and some spiritual offerings to the children. And so far, it's gone over quite well.
When you were talking about storytelling, so this is kind of a sideways example, but that's what we're talking sideways. And I actually use this as part of our stewardship campaign, which, just bear with me here. So our campaign this year, a lot of it was very much focused on building stuff, which, when you're trying to do stewardship and capital campaigns, as much as a lot of the finance may go to the building, they're more successful if you're telling stories about people. So I was thinking about what are the features of our building that tell stories. Stained glass windows. So one of the things that I did was I took individual photographs and I pulled them into an app on my phone called Prisma.
Oh, wow.
And you've probably seen people do things with Prisma. It'll take any photo and apply an art filter that'll render that photo in the style of a different artist. And so, it might be like a Modigliani or Picasso or whatever. But the filter that I used is called Mosaic. And it renders photos in such a way that they look like stained glass windows. So I took a picture of our actual stained glass windows, cut the window out, and so I had the stone frame that is a very distinct shape. And we use that like a picture frame, but then we put the pictures, these stained glass, mosaicked pictures of our actual parishioners in them. And it was a really cool thing, and people loved them because it was like, we are the stories of our church. And I think that's a really, I always say that we tell stories at 3 different levels. We tell the scriptural foundational stories of our faith. We tell the stories of our denomination and the way we interpret and understand scripture and tradition as Episcopalians. But then we need to tell the stories of who we are in our congregation at this particular moment in time, because who we are now isn't who we were 10 years ago. And so this became this very concrete way of sharing some of the stories of who we are in our moment in our congregation right now. And we hung them in the parish hall, and they just looked really cool. And that'd be a fun project to do with your youth, having them use their phones to take pictures, because they've all got phones, and then to render them like that.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
I'm aware that Ray had raised his hand a while ago, and we haven't really given a space for David and Patricia to come back in. So I'm wondering, Roy, was there Reed, I'm sorry, anything that you wanted to add?
Mm-hmm.
One of the struggles that I think we as a church have is that our adults either don't feel like they've been prepared well enough for their faith, or don't feel like they can have confidence in sharing faith. I can't tell you how many conversations that I've had with folks that feel like they're not theologians. This is for theologians to do. Let's hire the youth minister to do it. They're trained. I don't have anything to offer. And really, I think that's one of the biggest challenges for our church to confront, because if we don't have adults of faith, they don't have a way to pass it on. Parents are the primary educators. The people who are with their kids day in and day out are living a witness in ways that they're not always conscious of. And I use the phrase, is our espoused equivalent to our operative? What we say we believe and how we operate, how we act, how we talk about one another, and the things that we get involved in, are they congruent? I'm saying all of this to say there's a real challenge as a minister to know who your audience should be. And for the longest while, I thought I was hired as a youth minister, but I realized if I didn't help form the adults in faith, then no matter what I did with the kids, it was getting undone by the parents who didn't understand what the kids were learning and appreciating. So to find ways of doing intergenerational stuff was so much more important in the context that I was in. We did a whole series of talks on what is family, because we had a real mixed combination of things. And we started with videos from different decades of family life, starting with Father Knows Best in the 50s and All in the Family in the 70s and Cosby in the 80s, and now some of the middle kind of stuff and parent. There's just a number of them. Every decade has had some unique expressions of what families are. And by doing that and then looking at those shows to see whether or not faith and values were a part of it, all of a sudden we opened up a series of conversations that led to the adults wanting to learn more. and for the kids being curious about how their parents grew up and how they liked Father Knows Best when they were kids, when they couldn't understand why that would be an attractive show to anybody. So there's funny ways that we have to balance who is our audience, because sometimes doing theology sideways is helping the audience that we aren't expecting we need to be able to do it.
I saw a great example at the Evangelism Now conference of an exercise that I think would be really fun to do with a multi-generational group of people. Hershey Millette Stevens led this, and she showed a piece of religious artwork. And I mean, some of them were like almost, like cartoonish caricature things of Noah's Ark like you'd hang in a baby's nursery. One was kind of a different rendition of the three wise men, but they were rendered as women instead of men, bearing different gifts and representing different cultures. But I mean, you could choose different religious artwork. And she said to us, where are you in this picture? And so, different people were like, oh, well, I'm down with the elephants, or, I'm the dove that can't wait to get off the ark, or, I said, well, I'm always lost. So I was the fourth wise person that got left behind and took a wrong turn. But just hearing the way people projected themselves into this artwork, I think that a teen, an adult, a sixth grader, a 4-year-old, you take 4-year-olds into a museum and they're going to see things in artwork that you would never notice. I think they all could really engage in that conversation. It could be a really fruitful and fun way, but there's a creative exegesis going on there where, maybe you read the story afterward, or you read the story before to set the tone, or I don't know, but I just thought it would be like a neat exercise to do with a multi-generational group.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah. Hi. Visio Divina. We're familiar with Lectio Divina, but there's such a thing as Visio Divina, and that sounds a lot like what you did. And I think it's fruitful to do more of that.
Yes.
One of the things that we're experimenting with in September, our new rector decided, and this is definitely a sideways approach, is we're doing a family retreat at Camp Washington in early September. She booked the camp, and on a leap of faith, she's our new rector, because the booking was there. I think the interim had done it, and now we were kind of stuck with it, and she invited the director of Camp Washington to come down on Sunday and did a presentation, and it was popular, and people are already signing up to just spend a weekend with the church family. So we're really excited about the possibilities that in and of itself could bear in September.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the whole visual storytelling thing is really important, particularly with young people, but even in general. I mean, if you look at social media, what is happening is there's far more of an orientation towards visual storytelling. Absolutely. One of the things that we do on our website and with our social media account is we set up a church Instagram account for our youth on the church iPad. And we physically hand the iPad to the teenagers. So they are telling their own stories. They are taking their own pictures. And the way our website is set up, and full disclosure, like my company designed it, but whatever, it's awesome, is that the Instagram automatically populates the website. So we're really getting to questions of who owns the story of our faith, who owns the story of our community, who tells that story. So when you say to your young people, we are empowering and entrusting you to tell your story because you have a voice in our faith community, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to update the website, that's a really powerful thing. And this gives people hives, and they're like, well, what if they do this or what if they do that? Well, you can have parishioners, adult parishioners behave badly on social media. I tend to find that the kids rise to the trust that you give them. And if there's a problem, we can always pull the post, but it's been really exciting because they're telling their own stories.
Wow. Very cool.
I'm wondering, David or Pat, do you have some things that you'd like to contribute to this conversation?
Well, I do have partly helpful comment, I think. Connected, not so much, well, yeah, it is the fact that I'm integrated into the parish, but also work with Kairos, the prison ministry, has proven to be kind of a neat handle to get other parishioners involved in what it means to reach out to those in prison and the families of those in prison. When I've been on the team for doing an inside weekend, I'm better at recruiting people to do this. But prisoners, part of the Kairos ministry is to have people make placemats for the meals while we're there. You know, I don't know how much you know about Kairos, if anything, but it's basically it's like a Curcio for prisoners, with and to prisoners, the prisoners. I've only been in the men's prisons as a male, but they are unbelievably touched most of the time by these placemats that have been made, often by kids, not only by kids, but that has turned out to be a wonderful non-liturgical activity before and after church, during coffee hour and stuff like that, as all generations really get together, and they either come by the tables where these things are being made and ask questions, or they decide to make one themselves, or they want to write a little encouragement message on them, that sort of thing. All that is appropriate. There are some rules. We can't allow them to use last names or addresses or anything like that. That's for protection. But certainly good, loving, well-wishing thoughts are appropriate to put on these things. And the people love doing it and love hearing how these things are received. And it's one of those any age-appropriate activities that has done a lot of good for enlivening the parish and broadening, I think, their vision of who an appropriate person is to receive the message of God's love. These are not, you know, some of them are bad people, but many are not. And who cares anyway? You know, they're still loved by God. But also, a side line to this is that some of the people have been involved in housing the children of prisoners in a women's prison that's not far from us in New York State. There's a summer program where they call it 5 Days with Mom, and the kids come up from all over the country, actually, and are put up or housed by people from the local area, and we transport them to the prisons to have programs with their mothers, and that is a chance not only to have local parishioners figuring out things to do with the kids who are visiting, you know, the prisoners' children, activities at night, because they obviously can't sleep there, but that interaction is really good as they discover these kids have a mixture of insights and problems caused by the tragedy of the incarceration of one or more of their parents. And it also gets some of the parishioners' world widened, I would say, vision widened, and come to appreciate the fact that some of these people have grown up harder than they did, and that there's no reason to forget them for the outreach of the gospel. So it's a gratifying experience, and it is intergenerational. You know, it really does involve at least some parts of the whole parish. And we're fortunate to have
I share a lot of that same story, David. We at my parish started a camp for children whose parent is incarcerated.
Wonderful.
And we've got now almost 30 kids that we've been working with over the past 3 years. And to watch the way that simple things, like just giving them a chance to be kids and have fun,
Absolutely.
has changed their worldview enough that we might. Our hope is to stop the cycle of intergenerational incarceration.
Yeah.
I don't know for the rest of you, but the statistics are such that if you have a parent incarcerated, you're 80% likely to be incarcerated yourself.
right.
And if both parents are incarcerated, which unfortunately is often the case,
Yep.
it's 90 to 95% likely that you will end up in prison yourself.
It's just,
And so we're trying to offer some of that shift. It's also a sideways way of doing theology for us because we knew that our adults in our parish were not comfortable with the idea of going into the prisons.
right.
We had a gentleman in our parish who does Kairos and was trying to get friends to help him go into the prison to offer one, and
It's
he
not
couldn't
for
get any
everybody.
traction. But when we had the opportunity to invite those same people to be a part of caring for the kids, all of a sudden the world's changed and their hearts opened in ways that has just been beyond belief. And we've received so much more than what we've given. It's always that story of how much the mutual benefit is in those kinds of relationships.
Well, I'd love to hear more about that. Maybe we need to chat privately.
We can do that offline. It's
Yeah,
been
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure it
I
has.
read about a project that was a little bit of the reverse, where people doing a prison ministry would go in and work with people who were incarcerated who had children that they weren't able, obviously, to spend time with, and they recorded the inmates. And I know there's permission issues and all that.
Sure.
Reading children's books, and then delivered those recordings to their children with the book, that the child could have the experience of the parent reading the book to them.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Mhm.
I used to teach at a Catholic school in New York City before I came to the Episcopal Church school, and we had a number of parents who were overseas in the military, and we had a family we had a pair of girls whose mom was over in Afghanistan. And the classroom teacher and I was the art specialist. We would both do a series of art projects, and we would video them, and then we would send the artwork overseas, and we would do this regularly to keep the family connected. And it's kind of the same way now. I'm sure the U.S. although there are restrictions
Yeah, yeah.
in either context.
There
but
are complications, but that's all right. But these are just wonderful ideas. I'm not very technological as part of the problem. I look at a computer and it sticks its tongue out at me and shuts off. So.
Honestly, David,
Yes,
that's
honestly.
a great place. That's a great opportunity for helping the young people to feel their worth,
Exactly.
because you can invite them to help you, and in so doing, you both end up benefiting.
Oh, yeah. They always know more than I do, for sure.
And something like recording someone reading, you could do that on an iPhone. It's not even a computer. It's easier to do it that way.
Okay. I just got to match up with some people who are a little bit more sophisticated than I am.
Yep.
Pat,
Great.
how is this conversation feeling for you? Are you getting some ideas that you think might work up in Bangor?
At this point in my career, I am a sponge for ideas because I don't have a lot of my own, having no background in teaching. I've always worked just with adults. But I wanted to thank you for your comment about needing to focus on adults as well as children, because that's a vision that keeps me going, that if you have the adults, you'll get the kids. But kids without adults, well, good luck. That's all.
And Patricia, for what it's worth, I'm trying to put together some conversations, like Zoom webinar conversations around VBS. So that's something that if you want to be a part of, I'll make sure that I get your email from Julie and connect with you somehow there.
I would really appreciate that, because I will be flying blind on that until I read your book, of course.
Exactly. Everything you need.
Well, anyway, thank you for all that.
Well, I would love.
So,
I would love to know more about.
Go ahead.
No, I'm really interested in the VBS. We're going to do our first VBS this summer. I decided after the Forma conference to do the arts camp, which is a natural. So I'm really interested and excited to know more about these VBS conversations that are coming along.
Yes, I just have to schedule them. If you look on my Facebook author page, are you guys on Facebook? It's look up Lisa Brown author and like the page, and that's where I'm going to put the good word out. I just have to schedule them. I'm going to a conference in another week or so, and then beginning of March, I'm going to get these scheduled. But I do want to, this has been really helpful for me too, really thinking through some of these intergenerational ideas, because I think this is the way that so many congregations are going. They're realizing that, the 5 morning a week VBS, that was developed when, mom stayed home and dad went to work, that doesn't necessarily fly anymore. So I love that a lot of congregations are going like to a twilight multi-generational VBS, where there might be like a picnic or a potluck dinner, and then different activities for everybody in the evening. So I think that's fantastic. And Tina Clark's book is fantastic. I mean, I think, Anne, especially you as someone who's so into the arts, I think that'll be a great resource. So that's exciting. Were you at the panel discussion at VBS at Forma?
Yes, yes, I was. It was it was wonderful, and thank you all.
I had on makeup and I looked a lot better. I'm just saying.
Well, we all did.
It's the California air, Oh my goodness.
Yes.
So when I had you all register, there were some questions, and they're here at the top of the chat that people responded. What topics are you longing to discuss with colleagues? I'm curious if there's anything else in terms of doing theology sideways that you haven't yet heard that you still have as a question that you're wanting to be able to address. Reed?
You too. Big pause.
One of the things that was really important for our parish when I was doing the Kingdom Construction Company was connecting what happened during the week with what happened during church. And one of the charges that we gave everyone was when they went grocery shopping to pick up something that they would bring to church as a part of the offering, so that it wasn't just the bread and wine and the money, but it was also something that they could share with someone who had less. And the pastor at the time got a shopping cart from the grocery store that was what he sat in the back of church. And his challenge was to fill it each week so that whatever was given would be brought to the food bank to then be distributed. And part of what happened in our parish was that once a month, the USDA shipments of goods that would be distributed to those with lower income would bring their big trailers into our parking lot at our church to give the peanut butter and the cheese and the peanuts and the raisins out. And all of those shopping carts would then end up getting lined up with people with brown bags so that the kids and their families could help package what people picked up as they went through the line to take home with them. And so there was this way of connecting the family outing for groceries with the liturgical worship and blessing of the gifts with the sending forth and giving out and distributing that made it a much more complete circle than just having the prayers of offering that people don't always make a connection of what that meant.
And you can do that really thematically too. I was thinking about a time when we did a particular collection for a lot of items that low-income people may need that aren't covered through food stamps or that aren't often available through food pantries, like a lot of bathroom products. Like bathroom products are super expensive. And it's a little off color, but take it for what it's worth. I mean, I know a friend of mine bought a gigantic box of feminine hygiene products and walked up and plopped them on the altar. But it's that kind of stuff that isn't covered. And so you could do thematic things, or we've done things where, and this is more part of VBS, but you could incorporate it into liturgy and saying, all right, well, you know, children who are in shelters or whatever may not have the opportunity to celebrate birthdays in the same way. So we're going to bring in fancy paper plates and cake mixes and icing and non-perishables that would like make a party or things like that. So you could do some, or pet stuff is often not covered. And a lot of people who are homeless still have pets. And so having food and treats and that kind of, so you could do all kinds of thematic stuff. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
We use a little red wagon, and the kids will fight over, you know, who's going to take it down for the blessing, and we do that often, and it's liturgically connected as well.
Yeah, we used to have a little red wagon
we
too, but I
did.
love the cart.
It was very visual.
Yeah.
Another thing was to think of how liturgy happens beyond the Eucharist on Sunday. And we had kids create a prayer service for Lent that was basically reflections over the course of the 6 weeks that they then made into booklets with drawings that they made, and we photocopied, and we distributed it to all of the people who were shut-ins in the parish, as well as to the families, so that there was a sense of us all being able to pray these prayers on a weekly basis and be connected in a way that we wouldn't be because they weren't always physically gathered. So there was like a commissioning to distribute them, and then the stories that they brought back when they gave them out.
We did something somewhat similar. We've had our kids on numerous occasions make the stationery that our priests use for a lot of their pastoral care notes. And so we just get plain white index cards, decent sized, and then colored paper and like different scrapbooking paper. And we get those scissors with the funky edges and those punch things that make different shaped punches. So we instruct the children to decorate one side of the index card, so it's, you know, glue sticks and bevel edge scissors and funky paper craft, and then the clergy have the blank card on the other side. And people are delighted to get those. So that's something we do. The other thing that we've done is for special services, for our blessing of the backpacks, and for All Saints, we ask people to bring in pictures. So for blessing of the backpacks, we ask people to send in pictures of their kids on their first day of school. And that is such a sacred moment for parents. I don't care who you are, you know, when you're putting that kid on the bus for the first day, and such a moment of hope and expectation. And the expression was that we in the church, as the church, are standing with you at that moment. Like what you're feeling for your kid, we're feeling for all your kids. And we have displayed those photos either on our bulletin cover, or you could do a poster, or you could put them on the altar or whatever. And we've also shared them on social media. Same thing for All Saints. We asked people to share with us stories of the saints in their lives. And so they brought in pictures, and we made a saint display on the altar as part of the liturgy. And again, we share those on social media. So again, really meeting people in their lives and connecting sacred moments in their everyday lives to the liturgy.
Lisa, I don't want to forget I don't want to forget the special image you have to share. Can we show it and see how people...
Okay, so here is a lesson. I did not originate this. This came from Keith Anderson, who wrote the Digital Cathedral. So here's a story that you all know and love. Do you know what it is? Anybody? Bingo. So what this is an example of emoji theology, and it's a lesson that we did with our confirmation class. And again, it gets to inviting kids to share stories in the vernacular that they're used to using. They text and they use emojis. And so the way we did this is we divided our confirmation class into teams of like 3 or 4 kids. And I had printed out a whole set of emojis. And I gave each team a story Bible, a Spark story Bible. And I said to them, okay, pick a Bible story, pick a familiar one, not some really obscure story. Pick one that, we're all probably going to recognize and retell it using emojis. And so they taped them up on the blackboard. But I mean, you could have kids actually doing this on their phone. And on one hand, it seems a little topical and a little silly. But again, there's an exegesis in this that is very close to what we're doing, like in EFM and theological reflection, where you focus on a particular point in a story or a particular image in a story, and what is it that speaks to you in this story. And so it was a lot of fun. And then, the teams took turns trying to guess each other's stories. And again, it's a way for kids to engage in scripture and translate it into their own understanding and their own vernacular. So we had a lot of fun with it.
Very cool.
So we've got about 15 minutes left before it's time to close. And I was curious, what kind of ahas or insights have you gained from someone talking tonight? I'd love to hear what your takeaways are from this discussion.
The first thing that strikes me is that we're all struggling with creative ways to approach ministry. And I say this because I've done a lot of study on my own personally on the topic of creativity. And that's really the essence, I think, the heart of what we're all struggling with. And I think a lot of us in our own educational backgrounds have been very undereducated in creativity. But that doesn't mean we can't learn to grow and stretch. Indeed, the church is having to learn to grow and stretch and do this. And it's really a shame because creativity is the heart of our faith. Creativity is not just an addition, something that happens along with redemption or, it's a major biblical theme. And yet our culture, hasn't always supported it, and the church culture hasn't always supported it.
And to build on that, I'm very involved, obviously, in church communities, but also in some of the arts communities in Pittsburgh. And what is fascinating to me is that these are not people that are focusing on decorative arts. They're using art as a means to engage in the societal problems and concerns that we face. And the church is engaged in looking and addressing at those same problems. And yet these two communities, there's often such suspicion and mistrust between them, and yet there's such commonality. So I think art really can be a bridge, not only for the people who are currently part of our congregations, but to reach out into other communities and other people and help them engage in faith in a way that they didn't imagine as possible. To understand art and creativity as a theological and a faith expression.
Absolutely, Lisa. In fact, one of the pastors of a church in New York asked me to come in during Lent to do a paint and pray evening. It's very popular. These go out to these bars, have a drink, and paint. I don't know your way up in it, but it seems like in our area, it's just everybody goes to these places. And I thought one day, well, why aren't we cashing in on this, not for the money, but for the possibilities that it offers. So I would love to do a series of, maybe once a month, do a Friday night, or I don't know, a midweek, and invite, people to have, whether we do it a coffee or tea, or if some people want alcohol, that's fine too, or, juice or soda or whatever. And to do this, I'm really glad you're bringing this up, because people who might not be churched might be drawn to something like that.
And did you
in
meet
a
Roger
church.
Hutchinson at Forma? Do you know Roger?
Oh, yeah, he's fabulous. Wow, the painting table.
He
and
did a series like this at his
did he?
church,
Wow.
and they studied some of the great religious art, and they did like a photography thing. And I mean, it was exactly what you're talking about. He needs to write it up.
Wow. Mm. Yeah, he came out with another book. I bought it while at Forum. I haven't touched it yet, but I was really curious to see, because he's got some really creative stuff going on. And we shouldn't be afraid. I have friends when I studied art education, I had a lot of friends who were art therapists, or they were going into the field of art therapy. And I started doing a little reading and research on it. But you know what? There's a thin line between spirituality and psychology, and historically there's been a lot of overlap, and the sacred aspects is something that we could really be developing more. I don't mean clinical, psychotherapeutic, although, but there's that it's one of those liminal places where I think the church, we could really get back to the visio divinas, there's so much opportunity, people doing painting icons, and not even in the formal sense. There's but even more less formal ways of approaching iconography. But so thank you for bringing that up.
What other takeaways?
Unmute, Reed.
From a research perspective, the thing to remember is that the more senses we use, the greater we embody and remember what it is that we're learning. So whether you're using something like Gardner's theories of multiple intelligences or some of the others, there's a lot of truth to the fact that we need to do more than just read and write. Think and hear.
And the beauty of the Episcopal tradition and the Catholic tradition is that we use all our senses, as opposed to some other Protestant, traditions.
That's why things like the blessing of animals goes over so well in so many places. They can be messy and smelly events, but they're popular.
Yeah.
They're more memorable because they are messy and smelly.
that is correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Well, the last thing that we have is somewhat of a homework is to identify what we might want to talk about next month. We usually meet the first Tuesday of the month at 7 o'clock, and it has been our custom of 3 months of doing this that the last month brings the topic for the next month. So are there any things that you would like to share that we might want to have as our focus? And I can see if there's someone else we could invite to join us in the conversation. Oh, bummer.
I already know I'm going to
Okay.
try to tell the Christian ed specialist at the parish about these forums and maybe she'll be interested in coming on because I think she'd love this.
Well, that'd be great. We need to get the word out, so feel free to pass the link around.
Yeah.
Tell you what, if you have any insights during the next week, give me a holler. Otherwise, I'll come up with something on my own, which really could be scary. To hold us all, is there anyone who would feel called to pray us out tonight? None being,
And also with you.
and also with you.
You.
Creator God. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for sharing some time with us tonight. Enjoy your
Thank you.
evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night, all.
Shalom.
It's been great.